Goldsmith. I am one of the high school counselors here in Jefferson County. I work at Southern High School, and I'm going to be talking to you today about building authentic relationships with teens in a virtual setting. And relationships is just one of those things I've been passionate about. I'm not an expert, but I have lots of experience. I worked for 16 years in another district, and there I worked in elementary and middle school, and I also worked at the district level and was the PBIS person for the whole district. So I'm very versed on the importance of relationships. And then I bring that to my school. I've been on every school I've been at. I've been on the culture team or the positive behavior and team. But also on a personal level, relationships was really huge for me in growing up because home was a little challenging in my life. And so in middle and high school, it was the relationships that I had with teachers and my counselor that made me want to go into education and made me want to be a good student. So that's kind of my background and where I come from and how, I guess what makes me qualified to talk to you all about building authentic relationships. So it's important to know is in every setting, but this virtual setting, it's going to be a little bit more challenging, but relationships should always come before learning. You need to get to know your students. Your students need to know a little bit about you, and the more connected they feel to you, the more learning that occurs. You've ever heard the quote, people don't learn from teachers they don't like? That somewhat can ring true, but if you can connect with them in some way, you might not always jive the same, but being connected to them in some way does make a huge difference. So it has lots of positive outcomes. It's going to improve your academic results. It's going to make your kids feel safe and comfortable in your classroom and in your virtual setting. With us being virtual, if you're connected to them, it's going to make them want to log back in to your class. It's also going to make you as a teacher, when you feel connected to that group of kids, it's going to make you want to log back into that class. You're going to look forward to that. It also makes those interactions with the parents much better if you have a good relationship with their child. Because remember, they're always still their babies, no matter how big they get. Also, research has shown that positive relationships with students can have a positive impact on their academic outcomes and their behavior for up to 4 years past that. So just having that one really good, strong, positive influence from an adult in a school, particularly teachers, makes a huge lasting impact. And then also our most vulnerable students, they just really need some good positive relationships in their lives with adults. So those are kind of the things we need to know about why they are so important for us before we dig into our curriculum and get rolling with our NTI instruction and talking about those standards. So what we want to do when we start off, and just as in a regular classroom setting, you want to do in a virtual place is create that space for learning for them. You want to set norms and routines and make things predictable for them, especially now where things have been somewhat not predictable. A lot of our kids may not have structure or routines at home. At least when they log into your class, that makes things a little more calm for them and when they know what to expect. Learn their names. That's important. Also, in this day, we have lots of students with different pronouns, and we want to honor those and their identities. So be aware of that. Try to make a note of that so that you remember it. That makes them know that you value them. And just be real and honest with your kids. If you're comfortable talking about your world and your life and what's going on, that helps them know a little bit about you as a person. If you want to share your experiences, or say you have a pet, show them your dog or, your children, show them what it is like to live in your world a little bit so that they feel like they know you. Have students write about themselves to you so that you can kind of learn about them. Some things they would tell you, but other things they would write to you and not tell you. Also, it's good for them to tell each other, and so that they get to know each other. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well. And then you can offer a study group for intervention. So if you're having like office hours and things like that, there are students that might be struggling academically, but there also might be students that you're just struggling with connecting with, and you can offer up some extra time to work with them in those office hours and things so that you can kind of create that connection with them. But it's important, just as in a classroom, in this virtual world, that we set up that space for them to feel comfortable and safe and set it up for learning. So some great ways to start out. I know when I was a classroom teacher, I always started out with some way to like get to know their names, kind of break the ice, kind of loosen up that whole tension and nervousness. For me, I think big picture, because I work with ninth graders. So here I am transitioning 360 something ninth graders to high school. It's a brand new school, brand new people, and it's just totally different. So some things that some of our teachers have been talking about is just those icebreakers to get to know them. So play a game together to get to know each other. There's lots of great things out there. There's that Sporkle trivia, Guess It. Poll Everywhere has lots of good trivia tools. Student to student interviews. You can do breakout rooms and have them do interviews and then introduce each other, like the opposite student. I used to do two truths and a lie, where students tell you two things that are true about them and something that's not. You have to guess which one is which. So just some getting to know you activities. There's some other ones listed there so that you can think about ways to kind of break the ice and ease them in. There are tons of great icebreakers and things like that for students, especially if you're looking for high school students. You can search specifically for older students on Google, Pinterest, all those great places to look for things to do to kind of break the ice for them. So you want to check in with your students often. So you can use your Google Forms for this. Or you can even do like a round table where each one, if you go round pretty quickly, it can kind of just take 5 minutes. But you can say, hey, we're going to share highs and lows today. What was a high point of your day yesterday with NTI? What was a low? Or a hype and a gripe? You can call it whatever you want. Rose, thorn, and bud, same thing, only a bud being something maybe that they're looking forward to. So maybe that would give you an insight into their world outside of school. Like, what are they looking forward to that day or that week? Maybe they've got something fun going on that weekend, and it gives them a chance to share those things. Also, rating scales for gauging where students are, and this can be really valuable in identifying those kids who your counselors might need to talk to. So if you do a Google form and just say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being, I'm not feeling so great, I'm pretty down, and 5 being, I'm great, everything's perfect or close to perfect. And then they submit that, then that gives you some information you can then share with the youth service center or school counselor if they might need to have a little bit more, or maybe that would just open a door for you to have a deeper conversation with one of your students. If I go too fast, you all let me know, because I definitely talk fast. Incorporating group work. I know it's a little bit of a challenge, and it's out of some of our comfort zone with this technology. But when you have group work, that's going to build some community in your class, and it's going to help the kids get to know each other, because the relationship piece is going to be difficult for us as educators, but it's also going to be difficult for our students to get to know each other, particularly when you're looking at 6th grade students, 9th grade students that are transitioning to brand new schools with brand new students. I know at my school, we have a lot of kids from 2 of our main feeder schools, but that's only 2/3 of our 360 kids. So all the other ones come from lots of other places because we have magnet programs. So having some opportunity for them to do some breakout activities and group work, partner work, so that they can kind of connect and get to know with each other, get to know one another as well, because they need those relationships too, their peer relationships, and to make new friends as well. So some things that are listed there, you can, of course, Google. Our kids are getting pretty versed in Google. There's lots of things you can do with that. You can do those Quizlet Live where you can put them in groups. I also read a lot about a jigsaw method for discussions, where you give each one a section of, like, say it's something they need to read, and then they talk as a group and share and teach each other about their section. So of course, when we teach, we learn things even better. So that's an excellent method for like group work. And there's also Jamboard. You can look at that. You can use that in Google to do collaborative work with your students as well. And again, that just helps build some community, some connectedness among the students, which then when your students connect well, it also helps your classroom feel more like a community. Feedback. So I know you all probably been talking a lot about feedback in different PDs and things as far as academic feedback. It is important to give your students feedback, certainly. When you do that, it lets them know that you care, student feedback. It lets them know that you care about their opinion and their voice. So they can, exit tickets. You can do focus groups. You can do just a Google form survey. some sort of ungraded quiz that lets you know, did they get it, did they not get it? And you can even have your students do like video reflections of the lesson. Maybe you just finished a unit and you want them to reflect on it. But getting feedback from your students helps them know that you care about their opinion, and it makes them feel like they have some voice in their learning because you're taking what they're telling you and then determining your next steps for your class. So student feedback will help you with your connections as well, because they know that you've got that two-way open communication for them to be able to communicate with you. Just as important is teacher feedback. So when you're giving feedback, you want to make sure you're focusing on the process and not the person. So just be more specific. So there's an example in there. There's no evidence to back your claim. Make sure to cite a text or article we have used in class, rather than you weren't effective or persuasive enough in this paragraph. So it just kind of gives them the little deeper feedback to be more specific. Praise their effort as often as you can, because that's going to help grow that growth mindset. And that's what we want them to know, that yes, they don't have it yet, they're going to get it, and they're getting there. And so that's so important. It helps build resilience. It helps them know that it encourages them not to throw in the towel or give up. Give objective feedback. Use the power of peers too. They can also teach each other how to give useful feedback when they do partner work and things like that. And you can teach them and model that behavior by the feedback you give, and then allow them to do it. Remember, it's so important that if we're going to have to tell them something to work on, we also want to give them some positives. Research shows that that will make a huge difference when we're going to give them some feedback of something that maybe they need to work on. And then always in your classroom, anytime virtually or in person, address unkindness or cruelty immediately. So if you're maybe in a chat or something is said that's out of context, or could be, just cruel, just address that immediately, because that is also going to help your students feel safe in your presence in that virtual space. Again, we're not physically together, but they're going to feel safer logging on and not be thinking about what someone might say or do in that online class that day. So there's always those disengaged or disinterested students, and those are the challenging ones. So a couple of things that we can try with those students is there's a 2x10 theory, where you spend 2 minutes a day for 10 days trying to connect with those students in some way. So say you have, 1, 2 from 2 or 3 classes, just sending them a message, maybe asking for their help to set up reminders or timers when you're doing different things in your class, to kind of get them tied into where they have to pay attention, and just checking into them. And then doing that for 10 consecutive days, hopefully maybe that might bring that student and kind of pull them along to be more engaged and interested in your class. Sometimes that little bit of time you use with that student can just give you some great results. Also, everyone has a talent or a strength of some sort. Sometimes students have a hard time figuring that out on their own, or even talking about those. Oftentimes we can say the things we struggle with more than the things that we are really good at. So highlighting those, I know in my classroom I used to have a bulletin board where students would write something they were good at or that they enjoyed doing, and they could put their name or not put their name, and I displayed those in my bulletin board. And so that everyone's talent or something that they enjoyed was visual. And then I would say, look at all these awesome talents and things we have in this one room. I know you physically can't do that, but if you're using those Bitmoji classrooms and things like that, they do have a bulletin board component where you can do something like that. So and maybe even making a classroom collage and posting it on there. Look at all these great things that you all are all great at. And that just kind of helps highlight what students bring to the table, or what, experiences and things that they enjoy. And then always, making that personal contact with those students, sometimes just reaching out and asking them what's going on. Some students are very, reserved about asking for help or advocating for themselves. And then they kind of get lost in the mix. So just making that personal contact, say, hey, I noticed that you're not participating. Is there something wrong? Is there something I can do? Maybe there's somebody in the class that they had an issue with before and you just don't know that. Maybe they're in the wrong group. Lots of information you can get just from talking to a student. And then of course, if that doesn't help, you can always reach out to parents. But hopefully if you've tried some of these things, you can kind of pull those disengaged or disinterested students in there, and that's going to pay dividends. And you imagine the relationship you're going to build with that student because you were able to get them engaged when maybe they weren't in the beginning. So I know we're all going to be doing some synchronous and then non-synchronous instruction. So during those office hours that you have, be available for video conference or phone call. I know with my high school kids last year, I had a really hard time getting them to want to be on a Google Meet or Zoom. So I had a Google phone and I would text. So having those and being able to text them on your Google phone, or if you're using that new app that Jefferson County just rolled out. You can use your office hour time if you're not busy with students, building relationships by sending positive message to students or giving a personal check-in and seeing how they're doing, and reaching out to any students who may seem distant or disengaged like we had talked about earlier. That is a great time to it takes just a couple minutes to send a few text messages to a couple of students who may be struggling, or to say, I really appreciate your participation today, just to kind of let them know that you noticed them. Everyone likes to be noticed and know that they are a part of a group. So some things that you can do to build community, further build community in your classroom, is just have your students work on those things to do that. So just have some, even if you just have 5 minutes or whatever on your end of your class, just to kind of have something to build community. You can do gratitude bombs with letters or videos where students maybe say something that they're grateful for. And it could be a person in the class. It could be something about school. It could be something about the quarantine, however you want to phrase that. You could host virtual talent shows or things like that. The kids are crazy with these TikTok dances. You could talk about the latest thing, or maybe someone has other talents, like they can do sign language or celebrity impersonations, just things to kind of build some fun and community to help them want to keep logging in. And they also can learn things about each other in that way, make connections, build friendships just from the little fun things that you do. There are scavenger hunts that you can do. There's lots of resources and lots of Pinterest things on scavenger hunts to do with virtual classrooms. And there's a lot of virtual field trips out there now that you could do. And then you could always assign, if it's an English class or something, they could write a blog about it. So you could extend that activity into a writing assignment or something like that. So those are some things that you can do. Share work. The things that you're working on in class, if you've got some really great products, share them with the school community, share them with the classroom. Maybe you have a class social media account, or your school does. Things like that to kind of highlight those things. We don't have the bulletin boards that we have at school. We don't have the honor roll list and things like that. So things that you can do to kind of highlight students' work, that always makes students feel good. You could create a class hashtag that's just for that class. That kind of makes them feel like, oh, this is just our hashtag. And if they are involved in something, they can use that. And you can use message boards for students to write messages to one another. Of course, we want to keep those positive. And if there's anything that needs to be dealt with on a message board, you want to get that down and deal with that right away. Any kind of misbehavior or cruelty or unkindness, you want to just kind of address that right away. And if it becomes a bigger issue, then you might want to reach out to a counselor or one of your administrators to help you with that, because that can happen. We don't want that to happen, but we know we're dealing with kids and everybody makes silly choices sometimes. We want to help them along with that as well. These are just other fun things that you can do to connect with kids. There was a lot of them. I was going to put them in a chart, but I just listed them here, and this will be available for you. But there's, you can have say lunch break, say some of this, you can invite the kids, hey, I'm going to do virtual lunch. We can all have lunch together and talk about this book that we're reading, or talk about this movie that some of us saw over the weekend, just something to kind of connect. You can have the students teach the class, like teach them a talent that they know how to do or something, host a Zoom, Skype, FaceTime karaoke, things like that, that maybe you could do during your lunch break or office hours or at the end of class, just to kind of add some connection for your students. One that I really liked was this Mundane Monday newsletter, where students share the most mundane thing that they did that day or week. Just something different, different than a highlight or a low, something that they can talk about that maybe was just kind of blah. And you can make it funny. And then online improv there's a lot of Google improv games that you can play, and fun ways to get people interacting and laughing together. Of course, laughter is always good for any of us. So having some time to just do that and be real with each other, it can go a long way. All right, so kind of wrap up a little bit and leave some time for questions. But remember, you all are not alone. This is a lot to take on, just teaching your contents and your standards and then trying to figure out how you're going to connect with kids. That's a lot of things that you can do. Just try one thing, see how it goes. And then maybe the next week, try something different to build community in your classroom, to build a connection with your students, and reach out to your counselors or your service center. If you have a student that you feel like just needs support, they're not connecting, they're not engaging. And then also take care of yourself. If you're like me, I feel like I'm working more hours now than I do when I'm at school, because there's no like break, and then there's all this extra stuff trying to prepare. So try to find a balance, take care of yourself, go out for a walk, do something you enjoy, spend time with your family, and just make sure that you're, taking care of yourself as well. So I know that was a lot and I talked fast. Are there any questions or other great ideas that anyone would like to share?
There were lots of conversations going on as you were talking, and we can go back and look at those. One of the things we were talking about, and I kind of got into the conversation, we were talking about the compliments with students, and when you're giving feedback, to make sure you keep a lot of positive in there. And somebody mentioned the compliment sandwich, where you start with a compliment, you give them the criticism or whatever they need to work on, and then you give them yet another compliment on the other side of that.
Yes, great idea.
And kind of squish it in there. I really like, you had so many resources in there. Highly recommend go back and check those things out. One of the things on my team, I think, just because there were so many modeling things you talked about where it's so important for us to do it. And I think at the district level, one of the things we have done and started recognizing teachers and other people in district is sending out the virtual yes cards. You've probably seen them on Twitter, but do that for your students. I'm going to shout out my wife a little bit. She had done that for some of her students last year and sent them actually something in the mail. And it was just amazing for middle school students. They were like, oh, I got this in the mail. And yeah, and then it was showing up on social media. So it's just the little things when you do have that time. You were talking about making the Google Meet, make it open, send that invite, because maybe like, oh, well, she doesn't want to talk to me. I know she's there, but let them know you are there. Set a time up for them. That was a great idea. I really liked that. Something else my team had talked about, because a lot of people say, well, how do I start these relationships at the beginning of the year? I don't know my kids. What can I do? So that's like you were saying with the icebreakers. We had talked about, because so many teachers have become amazing experts at the Bitmoji classroom.
Yeah.
To use that, leverage that tool, because so many people are using it now. Show the kids how you did it. How did you? So you have one, that's great. How did you make it? Show the kids how you made that. Let them then make a virtual locker and decorate it. You can learn so many things about them. Build your virtual room. What would be your dream room in a house? What would you put in it? Show them how to make that, and then let them go. And then there's a slide deck. They each have it, and then you can talk about all the different things in there, and everybody gets to know each other. Lots of different ways you can see that.
And with that, if you're not doing a Bitmoji classroom, because I know sometimes at the high school level, it's a little too cutesy for some high school people.
Yep.
Just having them create a slide about them. So create a slide with a picture of you and 3 things that you enjoy doing. And that would you could have the slideshow of your class and just learn so much about them.
Absolutely. And you start that by modeling it yourself. Show them something about you, something funny. So many things you say in here are things that should be, it doesn't matter whether you're virtual or in real life, that you are giving, like the absolutely. Feedback, specific, positive, the modeling, all of that. But same as this, I would always connect with myself. I'm a huge nerd, and they would know that. And I'd always talk about video games, and I'd have so many kids so quick with that. It was just a great.
Yes.
Share those things. Find those commonalities. They are there.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's the smallest thing you can say. Like I remember when I was in high school, my freshman year, I had to write a poem, and I had to compare myself to something in nature. And I compared myself to the moon. I don't remember what kind of poem it was. I can't even tell you the grade I got on it at that point. But I know when the teacher gave it back to me, all she wrote at the top was the grade and funny. She said, funny, I've always thought of you more as the sunshine. And it just it totally changed the way I thought that teacher viewed me and saw me, because of the things that I came from. I just felt like I was just one of those kids. I didn't realize that she thought of me in that way. And it totally changed my perception. And to this day, she's one of my favorite teachers. I ended up taking her for an additional elective class that, when I was in high school. So, and it was just 4 little words that she wrote made all that difference.
Absolutely. That's that specific and personal feedback. Throw that on there and you'll be surprised, the reaction you get. That it's not just, hey, good job. Yeah, great writing. Make it specific. Oh, I really liked how whatever it is. Yeah. They starve for that. They love it, especially with some of our demographics. And then speaking of, once again, Rhonda Mattingly put in the chat, she liked the sandwich, and PBIS, typically you're looking at 4-to-1 with positive to negative ratio. And then in some cases, it can be 14-to-1, just depending on the student you're working with. So yeah, it's important to know your kids and how you need to address criticisms or things like that, or dealing with digital citizenship, which you brought up also. Wow, just so many good things in that presentation.
Thank you.
So you have a couple minutes left. I don't want to hijack everything. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I can't think of anything else. Does anybody else have any great ideas?
As I was watching, I think we talked about a lot of them. There's one from with the low stakes virtual lunch for socializing with a hint of academics, but mainly for the social aspect. Once again, it's the kids and a lot of the teachers. We need that social contact, getting out there, working with people.
We're going to need to spend a little bit of time in that first week or two, just trying to spend some time developing those relationships, because the more we do that, the more connected they're going to feel, the more likely they are to log back in each time. And, that's going to be key. Yes. Is just keeping them engaged. And that's part of that engagement, just having that relationship.
I could not agree more. Excellent presentation. It's great.
If you don't like the particular, I was not really I didn't love math in school. I was more of an English and social studies, but I had incredible teachers and they made it fun. And so I always wanted to go to that class. So just having that connection and someone that you can relate to a little bit, even if you don't like the content, you just want to go back because of the relationship with the teacher or the students in that class.
Yep. Once again, same as being in the normal classroom. You give them that one teacher, be that person that they can come to if they need something or they just want to talk. It can only help you. And like you were saying, 4 years into the future, those positive connections will last. All right.
Yeah.
Any final words, Jamie?
No, I thank you all for your time. I wish everyone the best of luck in NTI, and I know that it'll be great. And I think the kids are looking forward to getting rolling again. So that's exciting.